Welcome to Calisthenics Through the Ages, training advice for older people and younger people who think they might become old someday. I'm your host, Rob Peterson, and I have some big news. I just turned 54, so I've officially entered late adolescence. This will be the first in a series of videos about how to do a muscle up on bars. I know there are zillions of tutorials on the muscle up, but I've never seen one that I thought was really comprehensive. My own experience with the muscle up is pretty unusual, both the order in which I learned things and the age at which I did it, and am still doing it. So, I hope to be able to offer some unique perspective, and hopefully help some people who are struggling with it themselves. This video will be a tutorial on the slow muscle up. Now, the vast majority of muscle up tutorials focus on the fast muscle up. If they mention a slow muscle up at all, they usually just say that it's very hard and it's best not to worry about it. But that's not always true. For me, the slow muscle up came pretty easily, but I still struggle with the fast muscle up. I say, if what's important to you is to just be able to do a muscle up, you just want to be able to pull yourself on top of a bar somehow, then you should at least explore all the options. And if you're interested in functional training, there's very little in calisthenics that's as functional as a muscle up. Being able to do a muscle up represents the ability to get on top of something. Maybe your life will someday depend on your ability to pull yourself up onto a roof. And I would argue that in this respect, a slow muscle up is superior to a fast muscle up. If you have to pull yourself up somewhere awkward, like into an attic or something, you're probably not going to have the really good grip and room to maneuver that a fast muscle up would require. The strength to do a slow muscle up will get you on top of practically anything. For example, I don't think you could pull yourself up through this opening without being able to do a slow muscle up. It's a very small opening and there isn't much headroom in this attic. So if you try to fast muscle up, you might hit your head on something, even if you were able to hang on. Incidentally, I'm really happy that worked on the first try. That's the only time I ever tried that, and I don't plan on doing it again. It was painful. It was hard to hang on to the rafter because it had a wire stapled to it, and it had little nails sticking out of it. Don't try it at home. Anyway, like I said, this first video will be mainly a tutorial on the slow muscle up. Future videos will feature kipping, transitioning from a kip to a fast muscle up, and training for a strict fast muscle up. First, I'm going to show you the way I do slow muscle ups on a bar. It's a little different than the way most people do them. I do a little grip adjust at the top of the pull-up to get my hands into a false grip. For some reason, this is about 10 times easier for me than starting in the false grip. And I feel like this one little trick would get a lot of people doing slow muscle ups. And let me just talk about the false grip for a second. A false grip is a grip that places your palms on top of the bar when you're hanging below the bar, like this. Its usefulness is partly that it allows you to transition from below the bar to above the bar without moving your hands relative to the bar. A false grip is absolutely required for a slow muscle up, and I'm just going to take out a minute and go on a little rant. As far as I understand the laws of physics, it is impossible to do the transition of a slow muscle up without using a false grip. Now, there are people who have claimed they can do this, and I've seen at least one video of someone seeming to do a very slow muscle up without using a false grip. He gets to here and then slowly rises through the transition as if by magic. I believe that videos like this are faked, since they seem to violate the laws of physics. Let me explain why I say it's impossible. Okay, you're right here, attempting to pull yourself up through the transition. Remember, you're going slow, so there's no upward momentum. You can see that your center of mass is to the right of the bar, about here. Now, you're strong, so you are able to keep your arms bent, but what is it that prevents your body from rotating back under the bar? That's correct. It's friction between your hands and the bar. If your hands were not locked in place on the bar, you couldn't pull yourself up slowly no matter how strong you were, because your body would always rotate back underneath the bar. The false grip places your palms on top of the bar the whole time, so your hands can stay locked in place on the bar, and you can also push downward on the bar throughout the move. Now consider what would have to be happening if you were pulling slowly through the transition without starting in a false grip and without doing any grip adjustment. Your hands would be rotating in this direction, rotating upwards on the bar while your body was rising. That is not possible unless you have wings on your ankles. It's like saying that you could lift your body off the ground by pulling upwards on your hair. It doesn't matter how strong you are, it's not possible. and rant. The way I do it is possible because I do a fast pull-up and use the momentum at the top of the pull-up so that I'm weightless for a second, and that's where the grip adjustment happens. After that, I just muscle through the transition. You can also pull up to here, and then adjust the grip of one hand at a time like this, and then do the transition. Don't do that. That's not symmetric. It's ugly. And it's illegal in 17 states. Anyone who does that should be ashamed of themselves. Here's a video of me doing a slow muscle up without the grip adjust, just to prove that I can do it. Obviously, this way is much harder for me than the normal way I do it. Part of the reason is that I have trouble getting a big enough false grip at the bottom of the pull-up because it's painful to hang in a false grip with your arms straight. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about how to train for them. A slow muscle up consists of 3 parts: a pull-up, a dip, and in between the two, the transition. I'm aiming this tutorial at people who can already do pull-ups and dips. I'd say you should be able to do around 10 pull-ups and maybe 5 dips before you start thinking about working on a muscle up. Obviously, the difficult part of a slow muscle up is the transition. It's awkward, and it requires strength in weird places, and almost no one can do it right off the bat. I imagine most people trying this, deciding that it feels impossible, and moving on to the fast muscle up, or just giving up entirely. The pull through the transition involves a lot of forearm strength, and it seems to me like it also involves the brachialis, this little muscle that's between the biceps and triceps. I can't tell you exactly what's going on in your arm, but to me it feels like, starting from this position, you keep your elbows locked in tightly against your sides, you tighten your upper arms and your forearms, and then you push like crazy in this direction. Of course, the problem with this is that if you can't already do it, it's very hard to train it. Which is kind of the story of all of calisthenics. But that's what makes it interesting. I'm going to give you 2 methods to train it. The first one is pretty obvious. You just train negatives. If you have access to a low bar, you can just get into a support. If you're on a higher bar, the best way to get to the top of the bar, since you can't do a muscle up yet, is by doing a pullover. I made a video on how to do a pullover. I'm new to this YouTube business, and I've never done this before, but I'm going to attempt to put a link to that video right here. If I can't figure out how to do that, I'll put a link in the description. Okay, you're on top of the bar. Get as low as possible on the bar, and then try to control the descent through the transition. Probably at first you'll find yourself dropping through it like this, but you'll improve with practice. Try to start with a strong false grip. You can see in this video that I rotate my hands forward and really wrap them around the bar before I start lowering myself. And then descend as slowly as possible and really try to hold your hands and wrists in the false grip position. If you're able to descend very slowly, and especially if you're able to stop yourself on the way down, then you're close to having the strength to pull yourself up through the transition. Now the second method, and this is what I think that most people have missed. The second method is to train it on rings, and I think that this is the most effective way to train it. Learn it on the rings, then take it to the bar. The thing about a muscle up on rings is that it's more accessible. It's easier to train it on rings than it is to train it on a bar, and ring muscle ups translate well to bar muscle ups. I think that if you build up to doing 3 or 4 reps on the rings, you'll quickly get it on the bar. Why do I think this? Well, I've done a very scientific study with a sample size of 1, meaning that's how I learned it. Seriously though, this did work for me, and I really think that this is an effective way to train it. The transition on rings feels very similar to the transition on a bar. Just as on a bar, you have to do the muscle up using a false grip. So you want to make sure that you can do at least a few pull-ups comfortably in a false grip. It's easier on rings than it is on a bar. All the way from a dead hang until the rings basically touch your chest. And you want to make sure that you can pretty comfortably do a few dips from a deep position, because that's where you'll be at the top of the transition. Let's talk about the transition itself. Starting from the top of the pull-up in a nice strong false grip, you pull yourself up, keeping the elbows in. You want your arms to be practically touching your body the whole time. The ring should also be as close to your body as possible, almost dragging across your chest as you go. The thing that almost everyone does when they first try it is they don't keep their elbows in and they end up getting stuck in this position. And if you can pull up from this position, then you don't need this tutorial. You should just go straight to the iron cross. The motion that you want is pretty small. You just have to get from here to here. Again, the motion is like this. Elbows in, rings as close to the body as possible. Now there are two reasons why it's easier to learn the transition on rings as opposed to a bar. The first reason is that on a bar, the bar is in your way and you have to pull your body around the bar somehow. Like if this is the bar and this is your body, you have to pull your body around the bar like that. On rings, your chest can pass directly between your hands and between the rings, and so you can just more or less pull straight upward with nothing in your way. It's just easier. And the second reason why it's easier to learn it on rings is that there's an effective way to practice it. You can just lower the rings so that you can use your legs to assist. You can pretty much practice the exact movement of the muscle up while decreasing the difficulty to the point where you can do it. Of course, you can vary the height of the rings and how hard you push with your legs to vary the amount of assistance. Work on this just as you would with any progression, and you should be able to work your way up to doing it with no assistance at all. I learned the ring muscle up a very long time ago, in the early 90s. And back then, I never even tried a bar muscle up. Then more recently, when I did start trying to learn a bar muscle up, I couldn't do it at all because I was trying to do a fast muscle up and I didn't have the explosive strength or the right technique. But I think what happened is that I accidentally found myself in this position while trying to do a fast muscle up. And once I was here, I could just pull it up. I just did it the same way I did it on rings. So my advice to you is if you want to learn a slow muscle up on a bar, learn it on rings first, get it to the point where you can do 3 or 4 reps, and then it shouldn't take you too long to take it to a bar. All right, that's it for this video. In the next videos, I'll cover kipping muscle ups, and the strict fast muscle up. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment. I'd love to hear from people. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. Good luck and happy training.